Hi, welcome to my channel. My name is Annie and this is Unity Consciousness. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'd like to welcome any new subscribers and also thank those of you who are returning for this week's energy update. We have a very active Venus this week, and early next week we will be welcoming Uranus to the sign of Gemini. So that energy is prominent. The 29 degrees position that Uranus is currently sitting at in Taurus is part of the collective energy that we are feeling. Today, we spoke about this last video, but today we have Mercury, which is in the sign of Leo, is opposing Pluto in the sign of Aquarius. And because Mercury is still in orb of the trine that existed between Mercury and Leo, and Mercury trining Saturn and then Neptune, it kind of softens this opposition a bit, but there could be verbal confrontations or maybe emotional outbursts that require some uncomfortableness and maybe some ego-based antics that occur. Pluto is retrograde in the sign of Aquarius, and Pluto's retrograde is helping us understand our part in the groups that we belong to, what part we play in that group. And Mercury and Leo opposing that energy, especially because Pluto's retrograde, it's bringing awareness to relational aspects and the themes that we're going to face during Mercury's retrograde cycle. Yep, I said Mercury retrograde because tomorrow, Monday, Mercury in Leo is going to enter shadow. It's not retrograde yet, but Mercury is entering shadow and will go retrograde on the 17th of November and remain retrograde until the 11th of August. And during this retrograde cycle, Mercury is going to be interacting with Ceres, which is in the sign of Aries, speaking about self-care and nurturing, and also Venus, which we're going to talk, as I said, Venus is active. Venus is at the end of Taurus and getting ready to move into Gemini, which is where Venus is going to be communicating with Mercury over the course of this retrograde cycle. Those two planets are really going to be bringing some dynamics into this Mercury retrograde season. So pay attention, starting now, to themes that are coming into play. Anything that may be relative to today's opposition between Pluto retrograde, any verbal confrontations, or even communications with others that may be a little bit uncomfortable, that also intertwine with last year's Mars retrograde cycle that Mars bounced between Cancer and Leo, helping us understand and shed ego-based actions. Well, now it's Mercury. And Mercury wants us to step into heart-centered actions, heart, coming from the heart when we speak and stepping away from ego. With Mercury being in the sign of Leo, it's going to be about being in the center of attention, theatrics, storytelling, ego, confidence, all of that aligning with your self-worth and how people may use storytelling and wanting to be the center of attention to avoid having to come to terms with their issues relative to self-worth. We need to be courageous from the heart, not the ego. So that's a little theme we're going to be dealing with. Then on the 2nd, which is Wednesday, we will have Black Moon Lilith in the sign of Scorpio, is going to trine the sun in Cancer. Although Independence Day is really the 4th, I see this as our personal Independence Day. It's a different sort, however. The awareness of family power dynamics and or conditioning, because the sun is in Cancer, and the transformation and freedom that comes from that awareness by using alchemy. Again, we've got Black Moon Lilith is in the sign of Scorpio, And this is a trine. So it's easy energy. Having the awareness of family power dynamics and or that conditioning of family power dynamics, and understanding that can bring transformation. This is Scorpio and Black Moon Lilith, so we may have to go deep. We may feel things very deeply. We are aware of something, and by going deep, we are now using alchemy to liberate ourselves from conditioning or dynamics that brings freedom. And all you needed was the awareness of those family dynamics, of that conditioning that allow you to really appreciate this expansion and liberation and the freedom that comes from that awareness. Love that. That's why I call it an Independence Day of a different sort. Then on Friday, Independence Day, we have a very interesting energy day. First, we will have Venus in the sign of Taurus at anaretic degree is going to conjunct Uranus at that same anaretic degree in the sign of Taurus. And although this might bring some eccentric fashion trends to the fore, it's really a light bulb moment relative to relationships or money. Finance markets could be unstable on this day because of the anaretic degree. It's definitely not a good day for romantic surprises. So if you've got something planned, I would put those plans on hold, because even though it might bring some excitement to your relationship, it's going to bring instability without question. Because on this same day, we have Neptune going retrograde, stationing to go retrograde in the sign of Aries. We're going to talk more about that in a minute. But in a nutshell, Neptune stationing to go retrograde is bringing, it's illuminating areas of illusion. So if there's been any illusionary tactics in relationships, they could be exposed and blown up really, really, really quickly in an effort to take you where you need to be within that relationship or relationship dynamic really, really quickly. And as soon as or shortly thereafter, Venus connecting with Uranus, she then on that same day moves into Gemini, which is an entirely different feeling than when she's in her home sign in Taurus. When Venus enters Gemini, it's all about charm and wit. And the notion that comes to mind, the thought that comes to mind as soon as I hear Venus going into Gemini, I'm not here for a long time, I'm here for a good time. It's all about variety in relationships, independence in relationships. So if you've got a surprise for your significant other that doesn't go as planned because there's some illusion perhaps, or illusionary tactic that gets exposed, you might see somebody pivot really quickly, stand in their independence, and exit stage left. The Venus in Gemini is very social. It's very intellectual. It is good communications, very, very charming communicators, that is for sure. And a lot of Gemini relationships start as friendships first before they move into more of an intimate relationship. So again, very different energy. The dynamics of this day playing out in true form could see a relationship pivot very quickly. Now let's talk about Neptune stationing to go retrograde in the sign of Aries. So Neptune stationing retrograde will re-enter Pisces on the 22nd of October. Then it will go direct on the 10th of December at 29 degrees of Pisces. So here we are pivoting again from Aries energy back into Pisces energy, then we'll be moving back into Aries energy early next year. whenever Neptune stations to go retrograde, it can bring uncomfortable situations to light where we have an overblown imagination about something. The reality comes in like a thud. Illusions can be exposed. Illusionary tactics can be exposed. This is a time for an internal process, that's for sure. The Neptune energy and this retrograde cycle is the use of ethereal energy that includes faith deep within ourselves. For what purpose? We are going to be looking at our purpose of the use of our ethereal energy. And like I said, that includes religion. For what purpose? Why are we doing it? Why are we doing it? In the sign of Aries, it could be allowing the mirroring of others to expand ourselves through grounded effort. Your essence being grounded, knowing your true essence, and grounding your essence is going to create space for recognition that leads to the alchemy of expansion. I really like that energy. If you're in 3D, that was a 5D explanation. If you're in 3D, it's delusions of the self. That's Neptune. And for purpose and self-centeredness, I've got a purpose intended, and so I'm going to create a delusion, and I'm going to shape shift to fit in, and or create spiritual bypass so I can sidestep something. And coming from a place of woundedness will create this 3D understanding of how we're using Neptune energy. Something being mirrored to you, if this is the case, needs to be healed. It's going to be exposed during Neptune's retrograde cycle so we can internalize the situation and we can better emerge when Neptune goes direct in December with a higher expanded consciousness relative to 12th house energy, our own self-undoing, and our pure essence, which is going to be Aries. Okay? Very powerful retrograde season. Neptune's joining Pluto. And like I said, before we get out to the end of July, we're going to have Mercury there as well, and Saturn. So we're getting ready to enter this heavy planetary retrograde cycle. So I like it. We're going to be doing some internal restructuring so when we emerge, we can come out even stronger. Then 1 week from today, we will have Venus in the sign of Gemini is going to sextile Saturn and then Neptune, all in the same day. So this is taking necessary space in relationships, especially after the Independence Day Friday blow-ups could be, but this awareness that comes out of the blue, we're taking the necessary space in relationships to better understand our pure essence, who we are, what we do, why we do it, being responsible for intellectual pursuits of relationships, because Venus is now in Gemini. And remember, there's going to be some choices here because she's in Gemini. There could be some pivoting that occurs. And when Venus is sextile Neptune, that was more of a Saturnian theme, taking ownership of that. And then with her sextiling Neptune, it's all about that mirroring the essence of others to expand yourself. That alchemy of sorts without shape-shifting or bypass maneuvers. And that Neptune retrograde is really, like I said, that internal reevaluation process. And Venus is here to help us understand the mirroring of essence, of others, the mirroring of others, and how we're using that to expand ourselves. Venus is making it a relational situation for us, either in love relationships, or that could be even with yourself, but it has to do with love and relationships and or money. Maybe it's your relationship with money. So that's all I have for you this week. I decided to use the Field Tarot deck because of Gemini getting ready to change signs on Monday, I believe it is. Is that right? Yeah, next week Monday is when Uranus goes to Gemini. Decided to use the Field Tarot deck by Hannah Elizabeth Fofana, and the card that jumped out was the Queen of Discs. It was very interesting to me, very, very interesting to me. Nurture, which has to do with Ceres, actually. Nurture. The Queen of Discs is independent, intuitive, deeply compassionate, and motherly. She represents a mentor or teacher who supports and tends to the needs of others, but also knows how to care for her own mind and body. The Temple of the Soul. Keywords here: fertility, kind-heartedness, motherhood, mentorship, self-care, and health. So this might be a card that we can think about during Mercury retrograde, especially as Mercury is working with Venus and also Ceres. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. If you like this video, please click the like button. If you want to know when videos are being dropped, click the subscribe button. If you have any comments or suggestions, post them in the box below. You know, I always like to hear from you. And if you know somebody that could be helped, please do share this video with them. I hope you have a fabulous week. Namaste.